It's become impossible to speak of a street-smart feminism. This is an injustice for all our girls and young women. There's a march on federal parliament tomorrow protesting against gendered violence, and the PM is due to meet with organisers. One thing unlikely to hear in this debate is the lesson for girls to consider they're always, I repeat, always in a degree of sexual danger, just like every female in every human society in history. In the past, when we lived in tribes or agrarian groups, it was brothers and fathers who protected young women. It's really only in the last half century that the worlds of men and women have intermingled freely, and mainly in Western societies. So the simple message for girls that if you're drunk and alone with a man, this may put you at greater risk, is impossible to communicate. It gets howled down by cries of blaming the victim. Namia Freedman, who was a few years ago one of the country's most visible feminists, wrote on her blog about advice she'd give her daughter. I'll tell her that getting drunk when she goes out puts her at greater risk of danger. All kinds of danger. I'll tell her that being drunk impairs your judgment, slows your reflexes, and dramatically reduces your ability to assess risks and escape from harm. It goes on. Probably wasn't my best Mia voice, but you get it. Now, Freedman was absolutely crucified. The backlash was one of the factors she steadily stepped out of a greater public voice. To help women better understand reality is not blaming the victim. While it's unfashionable to say so, I have two daughters, and I'll certainly want them absorbing that message, along with many others, including that in spite of the risks, they live in one of the safer societies for women. Let's not forget sex and eroticism is where social conditioning meets our primitive natures. There's a contradiction in the message that women are in no way different from men, but at the same time, defenceless victims. A call to educate men is fair. But at the same time, let's not underestimate how protective advice can also help women. Well, Jacinta, obviously you're going to be first off the rank for this one.
Yeah, look, I absolutely agree. I think we've always got to play it safe in all kinds of situations as human beings, whether it's, women in situations where there's alcohol involved, certainly whether, I'm a mother of 4 boys, and I would want my boys to consider that when they go out at night drinking, I've got 3 of them that are old enough to do so, that they're very, very careful because of the very real case that they might end up, being confronted with violence themselves. It's just about common sense. And what gets me most about these feminists is that they will march on Parliament House on, an issue like this, and the fact that, women are told to be, be precautious. But they won't jump up and down for issues that affect, Indigenous women when it comes to things like customary law, and women of ethnic minorities within their own cultures. And there's far more oppression, I believe, going on for those of us women in those circumstances than women in the Western world. And I think it's a little bit hypocritical in some ways as well. But certainly, I agree. I think we've got to be wise about what we teach our boys and our girls. Not every boy is going to grow up to be a rapist, obviously, and I certainly am concerned for my sons that we're in a world where they're instantly viewed as such. I think, that's not real equality. But we've just got to be smart. It's about being smart.
Now, Jerome, what do you think about, are often feminist issues, that is one of the criticisms of a lot of feminist issues, that it's all through the elite lens, like middle-class feminists. Tell me some of your experience on this.
Tanveer, you mentioned in your monologue there street-smart feminism, and that the implication there is that if someone is not street-smart, then, they're going to be more likely to be sexually assaulted or attacked. And I just don't understand how you frame that argument there. Like, women now in 2021, They go for a run at night. They go for a run at night, and then
interject.
This is a men's
female,
problem,
right?
It's a men's problem.
I'm a female, right? It's not just a men's problem. I don't believe it's just a men's problem. I learnt kickboxing as a teenager, and it wasn't just because of that side of the issue, but because of the fact that I was very likely to be confronted with violence from other girls in my community as well. So I learnt kickboxing, I learned taekwondo. If I were to ever have any daughters, I would do the same, because it's also about empowerment. It's not to suggest, well, you know, if you're a weakling, you're going to get picked on, but it's also about empowerment. And that's part of empowerment, in my belief.
Look, a critical point I'd make there, Jerome, in no way does that take away the primary responsibility from any perpetrators. But I think it's quite a naive debate sometimes, where there's so many sacred cows in the gender debate that you can't seem to have sort of just kind of cordial, respectful, honest debates. Like me suggesting that. I mean, remember my criticism was that as soon as you bring it up, you're immediately accused of blaming the victim. But I'm not blaming the victim. But I'm still saying that this is just a sensible allocation of risk. But look, I'll let you finish, Jerome.
Sorry, Jerome.
It's okay. It's 2021, right? A female should be able to be safe at work. If a female wants to go out with her friends and have a drink and get drunk, she should be able to do that without the fear of being raped or sexually assaulted by a male. Fundamentally, this is a man's problem, and men need to step up and call out other men who continue to do this. And the stats back this up, guys. I'm not calling you someone that would do this, Tanveer. I'm not calling Campbell someone that would do this.
So this
but it is fundamentally men that are doing this, guys.
This has to happen. When you do it in the Indigenous community, we're told that we are demonising Aboriginal men. Again, this is an issue, like we talk about men in broad terms, but in terms of when it comes to the violence that Indigenous women are confronted with, and certainly young ladies and the sexual violence, we're not allowed to talk this way when it comes to Indigenous issues, because we're demonising Aboriginal men. And I don't want to demonise any, men in general in any of this, but, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander.
Yeah, Campbell, I mean, Jacinda raised an interesting point, isn't it? As long as you get classed as the victim, there's that clash, isn't it? As an Aboriginal male, yes, you're a male, but the Aboriginality trumps and you get the victim status, so suddenly you can't be attacked. Yeah. But tell us your thoughts, Campbell.
Well, look, I'm agreeing with you, Tanveer, and Jacinta particularly, because but I go back to some of the things I've seen. A few years ago, I had a state member for Cairns, well, was the candidate for Cairns at the time, Gavin King, who repeated advice from the Queensland Police warning young women not to go to certain parts of the Cairns waterfront after, late at night, in an effort to protect them. He was accused of condoning rape, and that was an outrageous political attack. And this is what has happened here. This is about weaponisation of this issue by the left against people talking what once would have been considered nothing more than common sense. The Chief of the Defence Force has been canned in the last week or two for speaking at the Defence Academy, and again warning young cadets about looking after their personal safety. Look, nobody's condoning the violence. No one's condoning sexual assault who would dispense such advice. But, we say to our young people to be careful on the roads. We give them all sorts of other advice. In no way are we suggesting then that we're in some way suggesting that the things that could happen that are bad are their fault. So, I don't know why it has to be in this particular issue. And it really is a matter of a political attack on the people who dare to dispense that advice.